Come on, way.
Hello, welcome to a special edition of Chet and Jon's Reassuringly Finite Gaming Playlist. My name's John Denton, with me as always Chet Roivas.
Hi.
So this is the Games of the Year for 2014. We're going to run down first from 20 to 11 on each of our individual lists, and we're going to hammer through them quickly. And then from 10 to 1 will be the normal deep dive. And we're also going to chat through briefly some of the games that we didn't manage to play or we didn't play enough of to quite get onto the list. And just, I don't know, we'll make it up as we bloody go along. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So I guess you can kick things off, Chet, with whatever you're going to start with.
Well, I mean, what I haven't played, so, you know, they might have been on the list if I had played them. I never played Smash Brothers on the Wii U. I didn't play Shadow of Mordor. D4, Dark Dreams Don't Die, which just got announced as free games with gold in January. I bought a few weeks ago when it was on sale. I haven't played that. Was Hearthstone this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never played that. I didn't play enough of Dragon Age Inquisition. Stealth Inc. 2, I never got around to on the Wii U. I didn't play Drive Club. But yeah, I think that's most of the big ones that I didn't get around to.
Okay, yeah, ones I didn't play, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which
I didn't play that either, yeah.
Yeah, people keep saying it's up my street, and it always sounded like something I would be interested in, but I'll get around to it at some point. Biggest one was probably Bayonetta 2, that I didn't play at all. I haven't got that yet. That will get played at some point, but just, yeah, it's been too busy this year. It's one of those games that's going to be timeless, so I'm not too worried. I'll get around to it at some point. I've played about an hour of Far Cry 4. I'm pretty sure that would end up in the list, and probably even just from that hour in the top 10, probably, but you couldn't possibly say just from that first hour. But a rhino did knock over a truck in front of me, which is fucking awesome. And I've played about 20 minutes of Sunset Overdrive, which I liked even those 20 minutes of, and by all accounts, mainly yours, it gets way better than the beginning. So, I like that. And I've just got GTA 5 on Xbox One. It wouldn't really be eligible anyway, but had to get a refund on the Master Chief Collection because that game don't work. So spent that money on GTA 5, looking forward to all of that stuff and the heists and whatnot for next year.
Likewise. What about stuff that didn't make the list? Did you assemble? I made a little note of stuff that could have been on the list but didn't make it.
Not much really. A game that I played a lot at the beginning of this year, but technically was the very, very end of last year, was the Zelda on the 3DS, which is a fantastic game. But I actually ended up losing it because I lost that 3DS and it was saved onto the 3DS. And because Nintendo from the Dark Ages, you can't just re-download it on a new 3DS. It's just gone forever. So that's that. And I'd say Drive Club was probably in the 21-22 region, even though it's a game with many, many problems. It's in many ways, I enjoy playing it more than a game that is on my list, which is probably slightly wrong, but considering how effed up it was, and still kind of is, and compared to the game that I'll talk about in a bit, it couldn't really make it on the list. But apart from that, I mean, I played a lot of games this year, but it doesn't feel like I've played as many as in some previous years, and I think that's probably something to do with the fact that I've played a lot less on mobile, and maybe it was a quieter summer than normal. But yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been quite as many games played through this year as certainly the last 2 or 3.
I've made a couple of notes here. Just that Wolfenstein: The New Order I thought was pretty terrific, but that's not on my list. Once it had been patched, I really did enjoy FIFA 15 quite a bit, on and off at least. Ultra Street Fighter 4 was basically Game of the Year, but it's technically an update, so I was just being a bit pedantic there. Transistor was a really haunting and really idiosyncratic game that I just didn't find a place for on the list either. Annoyingly, I think if it had come out yesterday or something, it might have made my list. But I was also going to include as one entry a double bill of Hyrule Warriors and Samurai Warriors 4, because Hyrule Warriors was like a gateway for me into that genre, basically, and Samurai Warriors 4 I put a hefty amount of time into that. But NBA 2K15 should probably have been here, but the way they screwed over new players it kind of put me off it a little bit. I just started playing Framed on iOS this week, but I haven't played enough of it, and I'm not 100% sure it's as brilliant as I've been led to believe either. And Advanced Warfare, the new Call of Duty, was worth buying just for the multiplayer, but yeah, it didn't make the list, so there you go.
Yeah, Advanced Warfare would probably be on my not made the list, if that makes sense. And also probably Smash Brothers would be just outside the top 20, which is meticulous package, but the game itself doesn't do great things for me. It's just too crazy. It always has been. Yeah, I can't really fault it because it delivers exactly what it's supposed to do. It's for that audience, isn't it?
So, for reals.
Yeah, and my boy absolutely fucking loves it. I mean, he absolutely loves it. So, yeah, I can't fault it there.
To be honest, I thought it was going to be in your top 20, but there you go.
Yeah. But it ain't.
It ain't. All right, well, who goes first then?
Shall I go first?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to rattle through the 20 to 11 quite quickly. My number 20 is Ollie Ollie on PlayStation Vita. Later came out on PS4 and is going to be on all sorts of things from going forward. Very enjoyable, very tough skateboarding game. Really enjoyed the difficulty level, really enjoyed the technical aspect of how... Fiddly's not the right word, but it required a lot from your thumbs to be able to play it well. Kind of an interesting throwback to an old style, but also very much its own thing. And looking forward to playing the sequel. It's good, kept me very entertaining at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's not on my list, but I kind of lost interest in it because the leaderboards weren't working, and
that
was a big thing for me. My number 20 is Never Alone, which I'll admit is a slightly tokenistic inclusion because as a video game, it's far from perfect. And it's a very modest production made by a very small team, and it's very rough around the edges, but it kind of reshapes the form, honestly. It has a format that I always used to fantasize about as a kid, whereby gameplay would be complemented by video at no detriment to the action or the narrative, if there even was a narrative. But I guess the accurate way of describing Never Alone is that it's an interactive documentary. You don't actually interact with the documentary, but it is informative. And yeah, it just left me kind of... I found it hard not to start imagining the possibilities of where the sort of the skeleton structure of this game might appear next. Because I wouldn't be surprised if, even as early as next year, a developer, makes something that's similar to this. And they end up reaping the rewards. But yeah, Never Alone is definitely not a bad game, but don't go in expecting something that's immediately appealing as a video game. But do go in the first place. I do recommend it.
I will get around to that at some point.
Nice, yeah, definitely.
My number 19 then, maybe technically not this year, but certainly this version of it came out this year, is Outlast on PlayStation 4, which was a PS Plus game. Probably, no, actually I was going to say the strongest PS Plus game, but that's actually flagrantly not true. But... yeah, a real strong entry, a game that really grabbed me for probably 4 out of its 5 hours or 5 out of its 6 hours or however long it lasts, and didn't only just outlasted its welcome. Sorry, I just thought of saying that just then. It's genuinely creepy at some point, some great jump scares. I don't normally like jump scares, but it handled them well, and there weren't too many, and constantly on edge the whole time. It didn't get under my skin in the way certain other things have. It was more of I use this frame of reference a bit too much, but kind of a drag me to hell type of horror, which makes you scared but makes you laugh afterwards. And it also featured 2 buff naked men walking around trying to kill you, which is the only game in the year that had that, I think, apart from Smash Brothers.
Yeah. I loved Outlast. I think I just, a technicality, I just thought of it as a game that came out last year. Although
it probably was, yeah.
But that would probably be sort of knocking on the door of my top 10 if I'd have actually included it, because I love that to bits, really. My number 19 is Pro Evolution Soccer 2015.
Oh, all the way down there.
Yeah. I would have loved to have played more of it, and over Christmas and the coming weeks, I am definitely going to do that. I think the problem is I can only really comment on the pitch side of things because I haven't had a chance to play my club very much, for example. But just on a primary level, I think it's a really wise and observant football simulation. It appeals to me very sincerely, just as a person who doesn't really enjoy watching football, but I understand the excitement of it, and the excitement of football is clearly not cheap. The victories you earn in Pro Evo are nothing like the ones you earn in FIFA. Pro Evo has not yet left me feeling completely hard done by, whereas that FIFA does that all the time. This might have been higher on my list if I'd have played it more, but regardless, I mean, it's very fine indeed.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. All right, my number 18 is Watch Dogs, PS4 version, a game that for a long time, out of a very long game, I was thoroughly enjoying, and just almost in an instant, just lost me after probably a good 20 hours or so. It happens sometimes in games, and with me specifically. If I leave a game for a little bit too long and try and go back to it, I'll just it'll lose me completely, and that's exactly what happened here. But I spoke about this last week on the underrated games as well. There's some really nice ideas in there for what is, in many ways, a kind of generic open world game and a generic Ubisoft open world game. But it has some nice ideas with the hacking. It allows you to approach combat situations in unique ways. And the actual combat itself, when it did come down to it, which was fairly often, was pretty damn solid, and one of the better examples in open world third-person games of gunfights. I said it reminded me of the first Getaway and its gunfights, which is probably rose-tinted memories of that game. It's probably completely impossible to play now, but at the time they felt like really cinematic gunfights. And yeah, I mean, I'd kind of still be interested to see where they can take this series. I just hope that they need to break out of the bubble of how they're constructing their open world games a little bit over at Ubisoft.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely need to do that. Yeah, Watch Dogs is not on my list, but I enjoyed it very much as well. And I was the same. I just went cold on it. But I may one day, go back. I've still got my save and whatnot, and there is something appealing about going back to Watch Dogs, I have to say. But whether I get time, who knows? Probably
not, really.
No, probably not. That's very true. Okay, my number 18 is Sunset Overdrive on Xbox One. Sunset Overdrive was a really funny one. I don't mean funny amusing, because Sunset Overdrive is, if it's ever not something, it's funny amusing. But it was a really odd game because it seemed to have been constructed to alienate as many people as possible before throwing in the towel and just saying, all right, fine, we'll be a video game instead of a comedy. And when it did that, it was really good. It was technically awe-inspiring as well. I really do mean that. It was... if for some reason you haven't seen it, it's a Tony Hawk, Saints Row, Dead Rising action game that moved really quickly and had you facing off against what often looked like hundreds of enemies at once, and it was really vibrantly animated, and during the action you were often looking out over a vast and very busy skyline, so it was a great advertisement for what the Xbox One can actually do. And on the whole, it was a very, very enjoyable ride. I could have done without just the barrage of non-comedy, but... it was really, it was outstanding entertainment, really. I think it's a really strong game, and I'm looking forward to playing they just released some DLC for it yesterday, I think. So
I saw that. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to checking that out.
I'm looking forward to going back into it as well, because I did enjoy it. I like the way it felt anyway. The first bit, the gags and stuff were falling very flat, but whatever. Okay, my number 17 is a game I assume is going to be higher on your list. It's Forza Horizon 2, the game that I spoke about with reference to Drive Club, saying that I probably enjoyed the moment-to-moment of playing Drive Club more, just because I think there has been a lot of big games this year, and there's something about Drive Club's kind of bite-sized races that was appealing to me at that time, but... Drive Club is a game that fundamentally didn't work for about 2 months, and also lacks it does lack the scope of Forza Horizon 2, and I don't want to be harsh on a game that is splendid in so many ways, just lovely to play, looks amazing, and perhaps my only criticism is that I didn't find the world as appealing as the Colorado from the first game, and I've said this before. I think largely in part, in the fact that I've seen that world in real life where Forza Horizon 2 is set to a point, and I've never seen, obviously never been to the Rockies. I've never seen that world, and it almost felt like an alien landscape, that first game. It was so unusual for what we're used to where we live in this part of the world. But I'm overcomplicating the issue. It's a splendid game. I think perhaps its complete lack of focus in terms of structure ended up losing me slightly towards the back end. It's very, very loose and open, which is good in some ways, but I think in a driving game I like to be funneled down a straight line a little bit more, Burnout style than that, it seems anyway. But it's not really a fault of the game, that's just the direction they chose.
But you could always choose to have it. If you picked through to go, there was a way of doing it in a sort of linear fashion.
Yeah, but because there was so much choice beyond that, I always felt like I should be choosing. Whereas if I literally have no choice, like in Drive Club, sometimes it's the difference between going to Asda and going to a small shop with only a few products. I've finished Christmas shopping today. So
okay. All right, I might talk about that in a bit. We'll see. My number 17 is PT, aka Playable Teaser, on the PlayStation 4. The Silent Hills teaser. I mean, to some people, this wasn't even a game, and to other people, it was like Game of the Year contender straight away. I don't know if I've ever loved is not the right word. Admired is definitely the word. I don't know if I've ever admired something so much at the same time as just kind of really hating it. But I hated it because it's so just demoralising and just cruel. And really, as a horror game, I just hate it for being as ludicrously good as it is. But just the photorealistic visuals and the horrible mangled audio, it just made me feel really uncomfortable. But you couldn't deny that it was masterfully done, because it really was, and it was free. And I don't know if I don't think anything like this has existed before, and I don't know if anyone other than Kojima could have made it work, because it was expensive and it was it was unique as a concept and as a thing. I just thought it was a hell of a I thought it was a truly significant event almost, but it was just get the hell out of my life. I never want to play it again. I don't want to.
Yeah, I may well be talking about that at some point throughout the evening.
All right.
But yeah. All right, my number. Where are we? 16. I'm gonna.
That was my 17. So
yeah.
Who went first? You went first. Yeah, 16.
My 16 is Nidhogg on PC, now available on PS4 as well, but I don't have it on that. A fantastic game, really. A fencing game done in like the graphics of a BBC Micro or something, the type of computers we used to have when we were very little in school and we do educational games. What to say about Nidhogg? It is a fencing game, but it's also a game where you kind of have to chase the other person through a level. It has elements of American football almost, as you're trying to gain territory on the other player. It's one-on-one the whole time. It's frantic yet sort of tense and tactical in the moment, which is always a gameplay style that really, really appeals to me when you have to be strategic but on the fly. And despite its like bare bones visuals and relative lack of animation, it has so much character. And these two little stickmen that are fencing each other, and it's strangely brutal as well when you run someone through with your blade when they roll into you or something like that. When played in a room full of people in the right atmosphere, it's an absolute riot. Constant laughter, a lot of noise, and just one of the finer examples of this kind of renaissance of couch multiplayer games that are coming in 2014 and will continue in 2015, which is a great form and one I wish I could enjoy more if my life situation was different and had anybody to play games like this with. I have to just wait for my boy to get a bit older, I guess.
Yeah, Nidhogg's a funny one. It's not on my list, but I mean, because I kind of feel like I haven't played it enough, but those few games we had when we were in Bournemouth made it qualify. I mean, because it was so fun. I mean, it was ridiculous to how entertaining that was. Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure why it's on my list. Just who knows. But yeah, I'm probably going to pick that up on PS. Have you tried the PS4 version?
I've not, no, because it's quite expensive.
Yeah,
I mean, 12 quid or something.
Yeah, see, it's always the danger. You just I just bought D4 and then they're like, hey, free next month.
Yeah,
like, fuck, that is annoying when that happens. But what can you do? All right, my number 16 is a game called Plants vs Zombies: Garden Warfare, which is just a wonderful game. I assume lots of people are playing it right now because of the anniversary PlayStation giveaway thing. When it came out, I described it in my review as being Battlefield in a baby grow, and I stand by that because that makes it sound a little bit flippant, but Garden Warfare is a very, very shrewd broadening of the appeal of Battlefield, and it does provide a surprisingly similar experience, more so than many like hyper-realistic attempts at emulating batters. I think it did Battlefield better than most of those. And it's truly funny, and EA and PopCap have supported it for months with fantastic free DLC in the shape of cosmetic items, but also gameplay modes and maps. It's a brilliant tactical shooter for kids or anyone. It's brilliant for anyone. I mean, it's really kind of wonderful, Garden Warfare, and my girlfriend has been obsessed with it since launch, so I'll probably be playing it forever in some form.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that game, but it would have been in my list of games that didn't quite make it.
Oh, right.
But really good. I mean, not got a bad word to say about it, to be honest. But I don't have anyone else in my house playing it to death, which is probably why I just let it fall by the wayside as other stuff came out.
Yeah.
All right, my number... Oh, God, I should have put... Why don't I just put numbers next to my list and then my life would be so much easier? 16? 15?
That was my 16, so it should be your 15.
My 15, apologies. Is South Park: The Stick of Truth, a game I didn't realise had come out in 2014 until I checked on the internet. And a game that, despite me not being a huge South Park fan, I've enjoyed it in various points over my life and enjoyed specific episodes and stuff people linked me to and whatnot. But I just laughed the whole way through. The whole thing was hilarious. There was a number of standout moments, including a battle on your parents' bed, which just cracks me up to this day. And just really, really sharp dialogue. I enjoyed the gameplay, which was a really light tactical RPG, but it was easy enough to never really get in the way. Probably got a little bit tiresome towards the end, but only right towards the end of the game. And you're not really playing it for that anyway. You're playing it just for the story and the gags. And there was not a point where I wasn't laughing, I don't think, or just generally loving being in that world. And quite an achievement as well that they managed to create that open world that feels like you're actually in a cartoon that is a very... It's both a basic looking thing, but also a very, very specific look that's iconic now and has been around since... It's about 15 years or something now. South Park's been around, isn't it? If not longer. Yeah. So yeah, to get that so right and to get all the characters. I mean, obviously it was written by the guys, so that helps. But you hear that in all sorts of things. You know, written by the writers of the show in the Shield game or something like that, and it was like the worst piece of shit of all time. So yeah, an achievement in so many ways and tremendously funny. I can't remember all the gags now because, like I said, for some reason I thought it came out in 2013, but really, really strong and very funny, and it's quite shocking in parts as well.
Okay, sorted. So what number was that? Sorry, that was your 15,
yep.
Right? Okay, my number 15 is Fantasia Music Evolved, which was a really bizarre... we spoke about it last week, and... It's something that doesn't appear to please anybody. It has little to do with Walt Disney and little to do with Fantasia. It's instead a very classy and very inventive harmonics game. And harmonics, despite the fact that they're 2 decades old, have still never made a bad game. And just watching that studio working on these slightly smaller scale projects, in comparison to Rock Band anyway, and working relatively quickly and still providing these fruitful and original and really stimulating video games, that's been a real pleasure. But yeah... There's recently been some cryptic chatter about a new Rock Band, but I'm excited about that. But I'm kind of nonplussed as well, because if they keep bringing out games like Fantasia, I don't really care whether they do that or not. I just hope they're making money.
That's it.
Regardless, I mean, Music Evolved is a very, very functional, especially for a Kinect game, very absorbing, I mean, it's just good. I could comfortably recommend that game to anybody, and it's exciting in ways that harmonics games are. So
yeah, I'm going to bust that one out at Christmas. I think bring it into the lounge, because you can do. You told me about the way the 2-player works. You can high five each other or something like that. And
I think you just shake hands.
That's right.
Yeah,
brilliant. That's cool. So I'm going to get some of that out over the holidays.
Nice one.
All right, number 14, EA Sports UFC, a game that started poorly and ended strongly. I was going to make some crap analogy. I won't even bother. I spoke about this last week as an underrated game as well. It was never really going to hit my top 10 because I'm such a fan of the sport and just kind of live inside that sport, really. It's a huge part of my life. And so when the game doesn't give me what I need, if that makes sense, and it doesn't, it was never going to hit that top 10 when it had every chance to for me. But they did improve it so much throughout the year that it actually... shows signs of life in its current form, as well as the raft of new fighters that they put in. But the problem being that the fighters don't feel massively different to one another, which is a problem with the game generally.
Yeah.
Still doesn't, much like FIFA doesn't feel like football, EA Sports UFC doesn't really feel like MMA, and feeling like MMA is a very difficult thing for a game to do. Yet EA Sports MMA kind of managed it by eliminating a lot of the complications and just focusing on key things that they knew they needed to be in the game, and anything that felt a bit fuzzy in that game or anything that wasn't quite working, I think they just cut it out and just made sure that everything in there just really made sense and really just added to kind of the drama and the realism of the fight. Whereas EA UFC is full of kind of fuzzy 50% working elements that don't feel right at first. It had some terrible stuff, some real fundamental moves that you would just never see in a high-level mixed martial arts fight. They've eliminated a lot of that and really, really improved it a lot. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm just I'm bagging on a game that's in my top 20, but ultimately, at its best, which is where it is now, you can have cracking cage fights on it, and that's something that I want to do digitally for the rest of my life. That I play video games, I want to have great MMA games. That'll be a must for me, and I can see the next one being very good indeed.
Yeah, it's not on my list, but because I never found the time to see it after it had been sort of worked on.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed it a fair old bit, but at the point that I played it, it was just a boxing game, sort of with MMA. A couple of sort of tokenistic MMA flourishes on it, but I would like. I've got a friend of ours has got it, and I do want to pick it up again. So I'll play it again at some point. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, my number 14 is a game called Pix the Cat, which is a really deep and insanely compelling puzzle game that just came out of nowhere. Another impeccable advert for the entire concept of PlayStation Plus, because before it launched, I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know it existed, and now hopefully it's gotten an audience that care about it, because I definitely cared about it. My first game, I think it was my first game, turned into like a 6-hour marathon. It's got really distinctive visuals, and it's a very, very smart blend of numerous other games. I mean, you could say that it's not original, but on its own merits, it's actually really hard to fault. I think they have done something really interesting with all of the influences that it uses. But if you get a PS4 for Christmas or something like that, and you missed out on this when it was free, it's 100% worth buying. I impulsively jump on it whenever I turn my PlayStation 4 on. 90% of the time, I just jump into Pix the Cat and have a quick go. I really recommend it if you have a PS4. Hopefully, I'm sure there's a trial. So have a look. It's very good indeed.
Yeah, I do like that game. It's not really grabbed me in the same way it has you. I've never had a 6-hour marathon for sure, but I do like what I played, which isn't that much, but. Yeah. All right. My number 13 is The Last of Us Remastered on PS4. Another grey area kind of game, because obviously The Last of Us itself is not a 2014 game. But I was trying to work out if the DLC is a 2014 game, and I think that it is.
Pretty sure it is. Yeah.
If it's not, I don't care. So I'm putting it in for that, which is a truly outstanding piece of content, produced with the same level of quality as the rest of the game, tells a beautiful story as well, and still has the strong gameplay. Really enjoyed the fact that I got to experience that for the first time on the new version. I held off when I heard that the new version was being made on buying it for the old version, which was a great choice, because you got this really good piece of sort of three odd hour DLC, but with the fantastic visual upgrade and the frame rate. That's probably the best thing about The Last of Us Remastered. It does look better, but that game was a splendid looking game on PS3 anyway. It just smooths off the edges, really. But what it does do is double the frame rate from 30 to 60, and it's just such a smoother game to play because of that, and the aiming and response times and everything like that. It's just it's the difference between like a good American game and like how a Nintendo game feels when you get from 30 to truly locked 60 frames per second like that. I don't like banging on about frame rates, but when you're playing the same game twice, and the second version of it does have that doubled frame rate, you really can feel the difference, especially in the game where you are doing, quite frankly, a lot of aiming, sort of aiming over distance with bow and arrow and whatnot. So the overall package is fantastic. I think it's been very, very cheap over the Christmas period as well. Clearly something to get if you just picked up a PS4. And good God, if you've never played The Last of Us, what are you doing?
Yeah. How cheap are we talking?
I think I saw it for like $14.99 or something.
Whoa! What, from a retailer? Or
no, from the store. But you know me, that could have just been
like just 2 weeks ago.
or just not happened. That could have.
Right. Shit, that's not, because I want to play the DLC, and I'd quite like to have another look at the full game as well.
Yeah, I started going back through it again and was loving it, but life and games got in the way.
Wife and games?
Well, yeah, but
oh, you said life.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I misheard you. Okay, my number 13 is Far Cry 4, which I played on Xbox.
I thought that might get into your top 10.
Well, no, I'll speak about this in more detail on our next proper episode. I've basically done little else over the past 2 weeks aside from play Far Cry 4, and while I think it's conclusively a pale imitation of Far Cry 3. I finished it the other day. It's become only the 4th or the 5th game that I have all of the achievements on, so I just played it to death. And there is sheer brilliance in it. and I almost loved it to bits, but I think that it's a lazier game than Far Cry 3. It's less challenging in every possible way than Far Cry 3 was. And despite an utterly dazzling opening, which is basically perfect, the possibility of a compelling and well-constructed narrative just fizzles out really quickly. It's Far Cry 3, but less good in almost every way. But nevertheless, it's one of my favourite games this year. I'll talk about it next week or whenever. It's almost excellent. It's the best game Ubisoft have released this year by a mile. But if anything, it mainly served to remind me what a stunning game Far Cry 3 was.
That opening is a banger, though.
It is. It's just. But that's perfect. It's just hero, villain, motive. It's like bang, straight. There you go. It's all you need. The opening is perfect, but yeah, seeing that sort of kind of collapse was very, very disappointing. But it is more or less more Far Cry 3, and I'll take it. It's still one of my favourite games of the year. But I'll talk about it next week.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into it for sure. Okay, where the hell are we? 12.
Yeah.
Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Again, no, that's a new version, it's a new game, that's fine. On PlayStation Vita mainly, it's also on PS4. I don't think I've even tried it on PS4, I can't remember. The game that got me through my multiple travelling... God, good job, John. Good job speaking. I travelled a lot in November, a hell of a lot. It's like 6 flights for about 8 train journeys. Really, really busy month. And Binding of Isaac kind of got me through all of that. Loads of coach journeys to get to the airport, all sorts. Played it to death. I've played the original to death on my Mac as well, but this is a far, far superior version, helped massively by the fact that there's twin sticks on the PlayStation Vita, but just so much more content. The change from flash visuals to pixel art does a lot for the engine. For someone, it's great for someone who's played that game a lot to receive a version that's suddenly twice as big and has all these new surprises, because that's the best thing about Binding of Isaac, discovery and surprises, as well as it's a tight twin stick shooter, but it's no Geometry Wars or something like that, or it's not a great shooter, but it's not really supposed to be. It's a game about discovery, surprise, and kind of dark humour, and it's always different every single time you play it as well, which is perfect when you're doing a lot of travelling, because it doesn't get boring. You can always jump back on for another go. Yeah, probably very close to getting to my top 10 actually, but I kind of, because it's an old game in many ways, I didn't want to quite put it in there. But yeah, I don't really have a bad word to say about it. In fact, I don't, so I won't.
Okay, yeah, I only played it fleetingly, and I didn't really understand it at all. I mean, I played it and I understood. I played it, but the appeal of it, as everyone says, was not apparent at first. So I'll play it in the new year, I'm sure. My number 12 is a game called Super Time Force, which is the superb action puzzler that we talked about last week. It's out on PS4 and Vita, as we said, in January or so do not miss out if you haven't played it. Again, like I said last week, like all great games this year, and most great games really, it's actually really easy to understand. Despite looking intimidating and overly chaotic in the trailers and stuff, I'd say that it's a shooter with quite simple puzzle game elements rather than actually a puzzle game, but it was no less gratifying for being a shooter. I wouldn't say that it taxed me or kind of astonished me in ways that great puzzle games can do, but it never stopped having the pace and the speed of a shooter, and that's why it's so impressive and so rewarding, because it is quite unique and really consistent and really exciting. Just really gleam. I thought it was a terrific game.
Didn't get my top 20, always meant to go back to it, didn't really play enough, even I probably did 3 of the levels or something like that, but it's one of those weird games that I absolutely love what I played, but just I can't, for some reason, compel myself to go back to it. Happens sometimes. Nothing to blame there, just one of those things.
Yeah, but the danger is that you start thinking that it's going to take a little while to get back into the game, which it won't. I mean, you'll be able to play it as if you just started it. As if you never went away.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so good about it.
I'd probably just need to stick it on and just get straight in there. Right. My number 11 then, is that what we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Confuse myself so much. Is BioShock Burial at Sea Part 2. I played it on PC. We spoke about this last week in the underrated games. It's narrowly missed out on my top 10. In fact, in the list in front of me is in my top 10, but I decided to change the order just as we've been doing a podcast. So it now narrowly just misses out. A pretty much spectacular piece of content, about 5 hours long after the similarly excellent but very, very short first Burial at Sea, which I loved as well. This felt like a real proper expansion in the old-fashioned sense of the word, how PC expansions used to be, a real extra piece of content, and hark back massively to how the original Bioshock played, with the reintroduction of Big Daddies roaming the world and splicers. I mean, it was a Bioshock 1 game in so many ways, but with a lot of the elements that the Infinite brought to it. I didn't follow exactly what was going on in the story as much as I would have liked. It didn't. The story is very interesting, but it's in danger of over-explaining what happens in Bioshock Infinite. I think one of the great things about the story in that game is that it is very otherworldly and dreamlike, and there's depth there, and people say there's a lot of plot holes, but if you go into the internet threads and stuff, people piece together this incredibly amazingly intelligent, interwoven story about parallel universes and all this sort of other stuff. But you can kind of not know any of that stuff and still fall in love with what happens in Bioshock Infinite, I think, because I did when I played it for the first time. And Burial at Sea, it tells this really, really clever tale and kind of ties all the Bioshock worlds together, but at the same time is perhaps in danger of over-explaining what happens. But the funny thing about talking about game stories like this is having a critique on this is not the same as... It's almost like it's a completely different medium than the critique of any other game story I'll talk about this year. I'm just going down my list, with the exception of maybe one thing. It's almost unfair to say anything bad about this compared to almost any other game that I played this year. So, a critique is a very specific thing to this game because it's still leagues ahead of almost everything else, or leagues below, if it's... you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but it's not on my list, and I don't know why. Because yesterday I kind of said that there was a very good case to be made for it being regarded as a standalone game. I don't know why it's not on my list, but a tremendous piece of content, and I think that I'm sure that even people who didn't really warm to Bioshock Infinite would like Burial at Sea Part 2 because it is very, very different, but so good. I mean, I still would one day. I say this way too much. I will still want to play that game again, but it's never going to happen. I don't know why I bother. But a tremendous piece of DLC, absolutely. My number 11 is a game called Delta, which is another game I spoke about a little bit last week. On reflection, I kind of feel like it belongs a bit higher on my list, maybe, but what can you do? Delta is one of the only games that I played this year that uses music to rouse and just kind of inspire the same kind of awestruck gut level buzz that Harmonix games do. And it's a very simple and brutally difficult game, but so well focused and so well constructed. I mean, it's completely no nonsense. A total blast of a very short blast of essentially perfection that I hope has a life outside of XBlig where it was born. I mean, a really marvelous game I loved, and it's nice that something that great can still appear on XBlig. Will it be the last game this good on XBlig? Don't know. Never say never, but it seems like a last hurrah.
Yeah, I would be amazed if there was something better than that on XBlig in the future.
Say never. No, I mean.
Yeah, real cracker. Right, that's the whole 2211 rundown done. So we're into the real deal now, I guess.
Yep.
Just keep going.
Yes.
Okay. So my number 10 then, official top 10 games of the year 2014, John Denton. I can't remember what else I was going to say. My number 10 is Lord of the Rings, Shadows of Mordor, Middle-earth, Shadows of Mordor. I don't remember the exact title of the game, but you know the game I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. It probably just snuck into the top 10 by virtue of the fact that it's kind of, and I'm not the first person to have said this, but Assassin's Creed done right. And, I know you like that series a lot more than me anyway, but this game, for a game that melds Assassin's Creed and Batman, basically, and sticks it in Mordor in a very, very familiar and iconic universe, it does it with a minimal amount of fuss. It really does. It just gives you the gameplay elements, the mechanical elements that you need to navigate the world, and the mechanical elements you need to have combat in that world. Does it in a way that's familiar, but does it in a way that's almost tighter than its source material, less so Batman, but certainly Assassin's Creed. Gives you nice, comfortable, easy stealth that you don't really need to use, but it's there if you want it. And really hefty, hacky combat that is kind of gruesome and violent in a really satisfying way. I've always liked stuff like that, with heavy swords and swords being shoved through people's faces and things like that. I just do. I'm not even going to pretend that I don't. And then just marries it to this really clever system that we're going to see more and more of, I'm sure, probably in Warner Brothers games first, but it'll end up in other places as well. Maybe an Assassin's Creed game. The Nemesis system, which is this ingenious system, really, that puts a hierarchy to the generic enemies that are walking around on the battlefield. Firstly, there's a bunch of low-level commanders who you'll run into, and when you run into them, they'll recognise you, or they know who you are, and they'll pick a fight with you, basically. And it's introduced in this kind of almost WWE style. They make their own little entrance, and there's almost entrance music as their cronies around them sort of go, whoa, that, like that. Very cool. And then you have a scrap with them. If you beat them, they'll either be demoted, or they'll seem like they're dead, and you'll be done with them. But 2-3 hours later, you might suddenly get ambushed, and it'll be that same guy, and he's got a huge scar down his face, or like a huge metal thing on his head, where the scars of the battle that you had with him, and you'll battle him again, and he'll be thirsty for revenge, and say he beats you, then he'll get promoted within the hierarchy of the system. It's, by the end of the game, a system that you can kind of see through a little bit, and it doesn't really try and hide itself. It's all presented in screens, and the hierarchies move around. You can see it all happening in front of you, which is actually one of the best things about it. But by the end of it, you can kind of see how to get through the game. And it's a game that, in its 20 or so hours that I played it, really felt like it had the perfect length. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was done. I didn't need to go back through it. I didn't want to do any of the side quests that I hadn't done or anything like that. It really was sort of a perfect length for the amount of time that I spent in it. I know people have spent 30, 40 hours in it and enjoyed that too, so it all kind of depends on your taste. But considering I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan by any stretch, it's not something that I don't enjoy, but not something I particularly care about either. Its use of that license was actually, it definitely added to the world, because the orcs themselves were done so well and voiced so well, and they had so much character, and it's such a great enemy. I've just remembered talking about it now that there was all that fuss that came out around a lot of this crazy kind of neoconservatism in games journalism nonsense about a tutorial at the beginning where you press X to kiss your wife, which is the same as press X to stealth kill, and that's how it came out. I don't understand what's going on anymore when it comes to that sort of stuff. It makes me feel like I've gone mad. But yeah, don't worry about that sort of stuff. Maybe there's some interesting things in there about race, but they're nothing to worry about. Maybe they're just it's just stuff to make you think and make you discuss in an interesting way, instead of wanting everything just shut down and banned.
I literally just installed this game on my computer, my console, yesterday. So I'm going to play it over the next few weeks, and I'll speak about it. I previewed it for a magazine like months and months ago, and I was kind of like, because when you preview anything, you're dealing with the buzzwords of the people that made it, and you're so used to hearing systems describing like, wow, that sounds really cool, and then it's like press X.
Exactly.
So I was kind of like, I was just really cynical, and then when it came out and hearing that it worked as well as they'd kind of sold it, I was like, fuck, I can't wait. How I've managed to not get around to playing it, I have no idea, but I can't wait to.
You'll definitely enjoy it, because it's almost impossible not to for the types of genres that we like. It's so fun.
Good. All right. Well, maybe I'll talk about it in due course. Know what I mean?
Sweet.
Okay, all right. My number 10 then is a game called A City Sleeps.
They made it.
Yeah. A City Sleeps is a pretty extraordinary little morsel of a game, and a really cocksure game as well, because sort of middle-of-the-road, lukewarm bullet hell games are fairly prevalent, but great ones are pretty hard to come by, and this is actually a great bullet hell game. It's made by Harmonix, again, who, despite the fact that they've never made a shooter before, absolutely nailed it, and were able to make sure that it was also a thoroughly bewitching music game as well. The core of it, the core of what made it so exciting was that if you've played a bullet hell game before, you know that you cannot take any unnecessary action lightly. You have to, throughout A City Sleeps, you're constantly compelled to endanger yourself by letting go of the fire button, because letting go of the fire button also stops the music. And that unusual impulse is what makes it so distinctive and so exciting, because you're playing with music at the same time as playing a game that's a brilliant example of a genre that is very intense and very demanding. It starts off quite easily, but in not very long, it becomes a full-on, full-strength, really, really taxing bullet hell shooter. It's playful, and I don't know, it's not sacrilegious to say that it could have been made by Cave. That's how good it is as a bullet hell shooter, but the way, as Harmonix games do, of allowing you to play with music, I loved it. It was so enchanting, and I love the music. When and if it arrives on consoles, because I played it on a Mac and it's obviously out on PC as well. When it arrives on consoles, I will happily buy it all over again. It does belong on PS4, so hopefully one day.
Yeah.
Just another really, really superb Harmonix game.
Yeah, they've had a strangely strong year, especially with the Amplitude Kickstarter being funded, and they crossed that goal and making that game as well. So good to see. Just like you say, just hope they're making money, they're doing well, they're keeping the walls from the doors and whatnot, and other cliches.
Yeah,
because they're some of the greatest.
Yeah, City Sleeps is what? I mean,
it's on sale right now on Steam again.
Oh, is it?
For Christmas sale? Yeah, so it's like 20% off or something on Steam.
Get involved.
Yeah, do. Definitely do. Okay, my number 9 is Towerfall Ascension on PS4/PC. A truly brilliant 4-player competitive, competitive multiplayer game. And I'd say the king of the couch co-op renaissance so far, until Gang Beasts gets its act together and gets into its final form. Very promising game that is. An almost pixel perfect game, I'd say. Very, very simple. Between 2 and 4 players, jump onto a side-on, or like grid set of platformers, very basic level. There's tons of different layouts, but nothing that you need to write home about. And the mechanics are very simple. You have arrows. You have 3 arrows to start with, and you can aim them in every direction from left to right with the 45-degree points in between, and you have to just kill other people with arrows, and it takes 1 shot to fell them with arrows. Very, very simple, but the depth comes from... first genius move is that the arrows drop after a while, so I'm sure they probably had a version at one point where the arrows just flew straight and never died off, but these arrows will drop like a real arrow would. So you start to be able to aim shots where a guy will be below you and you can just fire arrow and it drops into them. Always satisfying when that happens. It's a move that's full of flair, to use a footballing term. It doesn't happen enough that it's always a surprise and always elicits a bit of a roar in the room. And it's very satisfying to pull off, obviously. And it can stitch the opponent up if they've got the last arrow and you catch it, and then you've got a volley of arrows to fire back at them. And then on top of that, it's just loads of little clever in-game physics tricks that, depending on the map, you might hit like a little lantern or something and it bounces the other way, or you get little power-ups and you've got a bomb arrow that you forgot about and it blows up in front of you. Constant little surprises and clever little things that, once again, you'll have the room roaring the whole time you're playing it. It's so tense, technical, but so accessible. Anybody can pick this game up within about 2 minutes and learn how to play it and start having fun. Just a truly brilliant game. In some ways, it could be my number 1. I just didn't. We had that one lengthy session where you guys came down in the summer and we played it a lot. And apart from that, I'd not really had the chance to play it as much as I would like. But if we'd been back at uni and this had been every day, I could see it being number 1. To be honest, it's basically faultless.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, like Nidhogg, maybe it's the fact that I don't own them. I don't know why it is, but I kind of didn't even really consider including them, despite how ridiculously entertained we were that whole weekend. Also, the Sports Friends as well. I mean,
yeah,
the bloody pole vaulting game when that was incredibly
just fucking
amazing.
Pure hilarity.
Yeah. I mean, but for some reason, I don't know why. I didn't even consider those games as amazing as they are. So I'm an idiot, I guess. But Towerfall Ascension, incidentally, if you only have a 360 and you don't have a PS3 or a PC or a PS4, Ascension Climb the Tower is a very, very, very good rip-off. Although it sucks that the originator of the idea is not going to get the money, but what can you do?
The originator of the Towerfall idea.
Yeah.
I think he's done all right, to be honest.
Well, good for him because that's a hell of a game. Know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, right. My number 9 is Forza Horizon 2. I loved Forza Horizon 2. I don't know if I loved it quite as much as I loved the first game, but it was quite close run. I didn't have the same sort of I don't know, disillusionment. What would you call it? You weren't at all captivated or entertained by the landscapes.
No, that's unfair. Not unfair from you. That would be me sounding unfair. I was in Forza Horizon 2. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I've gone on about how much I like the first one more, just because I'm almost trying to justify it to myself as I speak. But it's a way smaller deal than I'm making it out, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have those issues. I also didn't have a problem with the way it was structured. I kind of liked the fact that it was open, but you could always choose to go through the championships and progress that way. So, I suppose the only aspect that hurts it is that it's not new. I mean, it really is very much all it ever wanted to be was a sequel to the first game. But I stuck it on earlier today, and it still looks stupidly good. I mean, if ever a game wanted to take you on a holiday, this is it. It's perpetually sunny, and everything just looks next level. I mean, it's actually sumptuous. I mean, it really is. I like just driving around in Forza Horizon 2, and I should do that a little bit over Christmas. And yeah, I suppose it's hard to talk too much about a driving game, especially a sequel like this, but you can just tell that it was made by people who love what they do and who wanted to please as many people as possible. In that respect, it's kind of a model sequel. It's not particularly daring or out there. It's if you wanted to be really impolite, it is a carbon copy of the first Forza Horizon, but so well made and so entertaining that I love it, and it's a really nice thing. I've got it on my Xbox One hard drive. A hell of a thing to just switch on, even if it's only for 5 minutes, and have a drive. It's lovely.
It is lovely, and yeah, like I said, I probably just in trying to explain it to myself made it sound like I don't like that world, and I absolutely do. It's stunning to drive around in, and like you say, it does feel like you're on holiday.
Yeah.
So yeah, a marvellous piece of work, no doubt.
No doubt.
Talking of which, my number 8 is Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze on Wii U. A game that I'm confident in actually saying is the best platformer on the system, and I include Mario 3D World in that because I've played that game upside down, inside out, left and right. Oh my god, I played a lot of Mario 3D World because my little boy is obsessed with that game as well. And yeah, fucking hell, I played a lot of Mario 3D World, the same levels over and over and over and over again forever. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is just so tightly designed. It gets excruciatingly hard towards the end, almost hilariously hard, yet you always know that you have the ability to finish the level in your grasp, and it's down to you. The challenge is laid out in front of you, and it just basically says, "Are you up to the task?" And quite often I'm not, but regardless, it's definitely fun to try. Occasionally, it makes me want to bite the Wii U controller in half, something that my boy has now copied, which is the first scar of many, I'm sure. But apart from that, looks gorgeous as pretty much all the first party. Technically it's the second party because it's retro, but you can throw it in with the first party stuff. Really, all of the first party Nintendo stuff on Wii U looks amazing, looks as good as anything else out there. Really, it doesn't push the polygons that some of the next gen stuff does, but it doesn't need to. It's 1080p 60 frames. It looks like a living cartoon. It's amazing. It also has perhaps the soundtrack of the year. Just a never-ending stream of incredible music from the guy that did the music to the original game. Just amazing. The final level has this kind of Game of Thrones meets Monkeys music. I mean, it's amazing. I can't believe how good it is. I could listen to it all day on its own. And I enjoyed it more than the first Donkey Kong Country Returns game. I think just because of how nice it looked, to be honest. You said that the co-op's not so good. We've never really played that, but it's definitely my platformer of the year. Apart from something that you could maybe call a platform. No, don't worry, it's my platformer of the year. I think it's the best platform game on Wii U. One of the best platform games in many years. In fact, since the Galaxies. It's not up to that level. And it's just a real must. If you have picked up a Wii U for the lower price points that they find themselves at, and the bundles and deals that happen before Christmas, don't miss out on this one. If you find it, I was going to say if you find it cheap, but even so, like, this is a real stormer, and another one of the essential Wii U titles along with the big guns.
Yeah, very, very good game. Very, very good indeed. I've just realised that my number 8, I said a few minutes ago that Ubisoft's best game of the year was Far Cry 4, but Ubisoft also published my number 8, which is South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Of course they did.
It's like a really fine wine. Stick of Truth has just blossomed in my mind over the course of the last few months, and it was kind of a miracle because that just doesn't. I mean, how often does that happen? A much loved IP, a reasonably high budget, and like close involvement from the originators of the IP. I mean, but they absolutely nailed it. It was funny, certainly, but so true to the universe, and it was consistently entertaining. I didn't think that it dipped at the end, even, and like you said, occasionally quite shocking. But I think the best thing about it was that it was absolutely aimed at people who play video games. It wasn't some sort of short-sighted attempt to branch out. It wasn't anything like any of the other South Park games that have ever existed. It was unashamedly an RPG, and it was an RPG. It was a very good RPG that had terrific jokes in it as well. I mean, it never felt like material that never made the cut from the TV show, that it wasn't good enough, so they just bunged it in the game. It felt like a very good episode of the TV show, even though it was obviously, it was interactive and it was 8 or so hours long, but really consistent. Basically, a lot of time and a lot of effort went in to making sure that this was not crap. And that's not a process that tie-in video games ever go through. So in that sense, it was really, kind of a miracle, I think. So I'd love to see it get another shot on next gen, because if you didn't play it, I think you really did miss out.
Yeah, next gen might actually just smooth over some of the cracks as well, because the engine could be a little bit frame ratey here and there. So
I thought it was basically perfect. I thought the cutscenes looked like they were watching the program on TV. Did. Did I have anything? I can't remember any.
It wasn't major, like, at all. Just it was slightly choppy when it panned. That was, I mean, it's nothing, but it just would look nicer, I'm sure, on slightly more powerful hardware.
Well, I hope. I mean, it would be a shame if people, because friends of mine who I know would have loved it just didn't get it because they'd already bought new consoles and whatnot. But I loved it, and it gets better in my memory as the years gone on.
Yeah. It really is good stuff. Okay, my number 7 then. Is that where we are? Yeah. It is The Evil Within, a game that I spoke about in the Underrated last week, and a game that at some points, and a few points in fact, was in danger of becoming pretty close to number 1. I don't think it would have ever made it because of what has ended up there, but certainly some of the highest points I've had throughout the year. Definitely looking down the strongest single-player experience I've had this year in the traditional single-player mould. I must say that in the kind of old-fashioned games that they're not games I grew up with. They're the games I kind of grew old with, which sounds ridiculous. In fact, I retract that statement. That's a stupid thing to say. But like the games that have meant the most to me, and not the games I played with a kid, and they're not really the games I played as a teenager. They're pretty much the games that I played from sort of the age of about 18 to early 20s. I got into games journalism at 22, so probably the 4 years before that. The PS2 era, really, the Metal Gears, the Silent Hills, the third-person action games that really gave me an impression that the genre, this medium, could be more than just sort of jumping about on platforms and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And Evil Within is a really strong throwback to that era, made by one of the originators of that era, and one of the guys that got me so fascinated with what games could be, because it always felt like they were brimming with potential at that point. They didn't feel like they were there in the early 2000s by any stretch of the imagination, but they felt like they could be there. Whether they're there now, wherever there is, I'm not sure. But regardless, this reminded me of that time. And did so in a way that genuinely shocked me at times. Genuinely, I'd say it didn't really scare me, but it certainly unsettled me enough, and was extremely tense to play at times. Probably Mikami's scariest game, scarier than Resident Evil's, I'd say. And it's kind of moved between being a stealth game, being just a batshit weird ride that you never knew what was coming next, which was definitely my favourite parts. And a Resident Evil 4 sequel, and a really strong one at that, in terms of the gun combat and the satisfaction of popping heads and the kind of crowd management stuff that's not quite as strong as it is in Resi 4, but certainly does a good job. I had to give up on doing it on the normal difficulty right at the very end of the game because I just didn't have enough ammo, which is a really, really shit reason to have to turn the difficulty down. I know it's a game about ammo management, but when literally you're running around, you've got like 5 guys chasing you, and all you've got is a knife, not a knife, you're punting your fists, and it's almost impossible to beat someone up with melee. It just got to the point where it was getting too much. It didn't feel like the balance was quite right. Whether I should have stocked up more ammo beforehand, I was never particularly careless with that ammo. So yeah, that was a shame really, because when it was a case of managing the ammo and having the bare minimum but just enough to get through the combat and just enough to beat the bosses and stuff like that, it really was pitch perfect and super tense, and it lost that when I turned it down too easy. But I needed to get through to the end of the game just to see the end of it. A few dodgy bits, so a couple of levels that could have probably ended up on a cutting room floor, because it's not a short game for that style of game. I clocked in about 17, 18 hours or something like that, and I don't think that includes the many, many times I died. So it took me a long ass time to finish, but a game that has some technical issues here and there, and I think by all accounts it's a stronger game on PS4 than it is on Xbox One, which is obviously a familiar trait of many games. But I know you thought it looked very drab, and I thought it looked absolutely stunning, and I've watched video of both of the Xbox One version. It doesn't seem to really do the lighting engine justice in the same way that the PS4 version does. But overall, I was always going to love this game. Shinji Mikami seems to just get what I like about the world, and manages to create video games about it. The Evil Within could have been my game of the year. It didn't quite make it in the end, but I'm still so glad that it came out, so glad that it's done quite well, and so glad that I got a chance to play it.
Yeah, it's not on my list. It probably would have been in the early 20s, because there was a lot to like about that game. It was a weird experience for me though, because I found myself kind of sort of analysing it very matter-of-factly about how much I enjoyed aspects of it, because I didn't feel like I wasn't overly enjoying it while I was playing it. I was kind of sort of had a very... It was like it was a cover version of Shadows of the Damned, which, I was talking about Far Cry 4 being one of the only games I've got all the achievement points on. Shadows of the Damned is another one. I played that game to death, and I think that's superior in every possible way. And they're obviously they're quite different, especially in terms of tone. But yeah, I don't know. It was a game I did enjoy, and I think there was some great stuff in. But I never truly loved it, I don't think.
That's fair.
But I do recommend it. It was. I mean, I did enjoy it.
It seems to be tuppence now everywhere as well. So
yeah. So I mean, for the prices that it's available, I'd definitely go nuts. My number 7, I have a feeling, is going to be a little bit higher on your list. It's Destiny.
Yes.
Yeah. Destiny is a really confusing game. It's something that I think, and I say this with near 100% certainty, it's a game that would have been universally celebrated and regarded as unequivocally one of the best games of the year if it had a traditional end game and a more traditional design. I think that a lot of people's confusion and disillusionment in some cases comes from a misunderstanding of what MMOs are, and I still to this day just wonder, why can't I have that thing now? Why must I play for 10 hours to get that thing that I want? I may play for 10 hours anyway. Why the need to coerce me? So, I mean, that's just MMOs. I wouldn't have played Destiny for anywhere near as long as I did if there was a normal form of end game of some kind. So the structure kept me invested for longer, far longer than it would have done. But I've grown really uncomfortable with that recently. Invest a very large chunk of your life or you're not welcome. Only you kind of are welcome because it's fun and it's engaging the entire time. I don't know. As I've said many times, Destiny inspires really mixed emotion to me, but it's one of the only video games released this year that feels totally contemporary. It's almost certainly the best looking game I played all year, and some aspects of it, just like the fact that you can modify everything, the loadouts, about everything, you can modify everything while the game's loading. That has to become the norm now.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Now that we know that is possible, nothing else will do. They've broken ground there. That has to be that's got to become the norm. I did love Destiny. I mean, I still do kind of. I have commitment issues, I suppose. I don't know. The structure so confuses me so deeply that I've lost the ability to just let my hair down and enjoy it, which is what it can do. It is enjoyable, just buzzing around with your friends and doing bounties. It's fun, but I don't know. I'm confused by the game, but everyone should have played it. I mean, at the very least, it's definitely one of the games of the year. I don't get it still.
That's fair, and I will talk about it later.
All right.
Okay, my number 6 then. Yeah, we're getting through it. Is Mario Kart on the Wii U. I believe it's just known as Mario Kart 8, isn't it? That's what it's called.
That's right.
Again, I mean, I've talked this year about the kind of Nintendo packages that are coming out on Wii U. On Wii, they kind of took some of their franchises in a party game direction, Mario Kart being one of them. And also did some amazing things with some of their games. Zelda, I never played Skyward Sword, unfortunately, but it's obviously the Galaxy games they're incredible. But there was so many games on Wii, and there were so many consoles out there that they could afford to do these kind of things. Wii U hasn't been a great success, obviously. I know it's a popular machine amongst the people that own it, but it obviously hasn't done the numbers that Nintendo would have liked it to have done. So seemingly to remedy this, or to make the best of a bad situation, if you want, they are releasing their franchises, and they feel like sweets, almost like packages of the likes of which you rarely see. These almost feel like final versions of these games. I'm sure they're not going to be. I'm sure this isn't the last Mario Kart we'll see. But in Mario Kart, in Mario 3D World, and in Smash Brothers, they're so complete. There's so much content in there. There's so much polish. It's they don't fit. This has been the game when barely anything's. This has been the year where barely any fucking games worked. Assassin's Creed is a nightmare. I had to get a refund on Halo, a digital version of Halo, because it just didn't work. And I've never bothered to get a refund on something, even if it was a bit sketchy. Yeah, I wouldn't have got bothered to get a refund on Assassins if I'd bought it. But literally, that game didn't work. There are so many others that kind of half worked. As Drive Club, I've forgotten. That's the scary thing. I've forgotten about all the games that didn't work this year. Mario Kart is not one of those games, although it did have a couple of connectivity issues when it first came out, to be fair. But now, you wouldn't know any of that stuff. It's just such an amazing suite of Mario Kart goodness. In terms of how it plays, it's gone back to being a racing game. You have to hit a strong racing line. If you're a better driver, you will win more often than not in Mario Kart 8. Yes, you might get stitched up with a green shell on the last thing. That's fundamental to the game and has been since 1992. But just like it should be, and the 3DS version, and the best ones over the years, if you're good at Mario Kart and you know the tracks and you know how to play it, and I'm not just talking about shortcuts, you will more often than not end up on top, which I think is very important. As much fun as Mario Kart on the Wii was, I don't think that's really a sustainable way of keeping this game. It looks incredible, as good as anything that you'll play this year. Despite the fact on what is aging tech inside that box, it's just absolutely truly stunning looking game, sort of bolstered by the amount of character in the action that's going on screen. Everybody's seen. The prime example of that is the Luigi death stare, which is became an internet meme throughout the sort of early part of the year. But every single time you bash someone in the game, they'll react. And these are iconic characters that we've loved for 20, 30 years. And they're brought to life here probably better than they have been anywhere else, better than they are in Smash Brothers even. And it is what's made a 3-year-old boy, my boy, kind of fall in love with this world. As Mario Kart was his first introduction to this world, and to him, like, the Nintendo world is like, it's his Disney. I mean, that's been a line that's been used over the years. But I could show him a lineup of Disney characters, and he could probably pick out Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck maybe. But I'll show him the entire Mushroom Kingdom and even greater Nintendo universe now, and he knows who all of them are. And that's probably my fault, but the reason being is because I said this last week, these games, they are for kids, and that doesn't mean that adults can't play them and enjoy them because they're so incredibly well designed and they scale up and the difficulties scale up. And I'm talking about Mario Kart 3D World and Smash Brothers here, but fundamentally they are bright cartoony games with cartoon characters in, and they are for kids, and they were for kids when we were kids, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And this is probably the finest example of what Nintendo have done in many a year, and an incredible package for the price that you pay for it. 40 odd quid, and then the DLC on top of it. 16 new tracks for 11 quid in a world where you're getting charged. I'll talk about Destiny later, but you can argue whether or not it's the DLC they've released is worth it or not, but you could never argue the 16 meticulously, beautifully made tracks. Assume we've only seen 8 of them so far, for £11. That's quite something. And the game is as well.
Yeah, no question of it. Just going back to something you said, you wouldn't have got a refund on Assassin's Creed Unity?
Not if I'd bought it digitally. I just couldn't imagine going through the rigmarole of getting a refund, which is actually really painless, I found out, if you ever need to do it on, certainly on Xbox. But, I'd have probably just put it down to being a shit game and traded it in, which I guess is kind of getting a refund, but not really. I fundamentally basically took Halo back to the digital shop saying this doesn't work, and I can't remember ever doing that with anything. But I'm glad I did.
All right, fair enough. All right, well, my number 6 is the aforementioned Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U. I can more or less cut and paste what you said. Tropical Freeze is a tremendous video game, entirely tremendous. It was as good in its design and in the broadness of its ideas as any one of the original 3 Donkey Kong Country games on the Super Nintendo. And also, like you said, visually very rich. And it had, as you said, a world-class soundtrack. I know some people probably thought we were round the bend last week when we were recommending the music from Yoshi's New Island. But I defy anyone not to enjoy the fucking shit out of the music in Tropical Freeze. It's amazing. I mean, just go on YouTube and listen to it. It's just fantastic. The soundtrack's amazing.
It is.
But yeah, it was an outstanding platformer. If I was going to be really straightforward about praising it, it's just easiest to say that there are just no bad bits in it. Some sequences and set pieces were better than others, but it had a consistency that was pure Nintendo. It's absolutely reminiscent of the first Donkey Kong Country on the SNES was a game that I preferred to Super Mario World. This breathes the same air as that game. I really hope they get to make another one because they've taken a series that was prestigious in my eyes because I held it in such high regard, and they've made 2 games now that are absolutely of that quality. It's just, and it's like a classic album where every track is just amazing. You really can't say that they don't make them like they used to because they really do. This is just a nostalgia trip as well. If you played those games, I mean, it's as good and as surprising and as occasionally brutal as they were. And yeah, I mean, it's slightly less widely revered than a few other Wii U games, Wii U exclusives from this year.
Yeah.
But it is like you said, it's right up there with them. So play it, just play it. If you have a Wii U, don't overlook it because it really is just tremendous.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 5 then. Here we go. Top 5 is Pro Evolution Soccer 2015, as you mentioned in earlier on your list.
Yeah.
The football game that I've been looking forward to for years and years and years. The football game I've been looking forward to since about 2004, when Pro Evolution Soccer was my main game, the game that I played every single day, the game that got me through university. Not that was a particularly difficult thing to do, to be honest. It's a bit of a joke. But, I've kind of fallen back in love with Pro over the last few years. As I've spoken about many times, 2013 was glorious. 2014 I loved, showed so much promise, but let itself massively down by not working online. And I can totally understand why some people thought it was sluggish, because it was. Didn't bother me that much. But 2015 takes all of the great stuff from 2014 and puts it into the kind of responsive game engine that the series has always been known for. And you spoke about it before, the victories, the glories in Pro Evolution Soccer are earned, and that's what makes them so sweet. And the losses, they're earned as well in some ways. You can quite often, yes, you can feel screwed over, but it is a sports game. That's just part of what happens. But most of the time you feel like you've been outplayed, or you've been undone by a good move or something like that, whether you're playing the excellent AI or playing online or playing someone in real life. And that itself is satisfying. It's never fun to lose. You don't want to lose when you play online, but losing 2-1 to a good player playing well, who scores good goals, is fine. It's this thing you can you'll send them a message saying good game afterwards instead of picking up the PS4 and trying to shove it into the wall like you would when you're playing FIFA. I had to get rid of FIFA because it wasn't. I was making myself very stressed playing it in a way that was probably detrimental to my health. Would be a massive over exaggeration because I don't think it was causing me any long term damage, but if I'm playing video games for a few hours, a few nights a week, not massive amounts of time, and I'm doing that to myself, that's stupid. And so I had to remove it from my life to avoid doing it because it was still compelling. I still wanted to put it on. It's so quick to get into a match, and you had the cold seasons mode and stuff. And when you do win, it's fun. But Pro Evolution Soccer, I've probably, in terms of hours, probably still play FIFA 15 more, especially recently because I've had a certain addiction to a certain game. But Pro Evo is going to be there and it's going to get played all year. And whether I'm sticking it on for one quick match before the football comes on a Saturday just to get me in the mood, or I sat down for a good online session, or I will repeat the fact that the AI is good enough to enjoy playing against the computer. It really is and always was. And playing Master League back in the day it was good because playing against a computer felt enough like playing against a real person that it varies its tactics and kind of it makes mistakes, but also can outplay you, and it feels real. You get the same level of drama. In fact, in some ways, it's better because it doesn't rely on exploits. Not that there are massive exploits in 2015, but there is the old Ronaldo exploit, which is pretty much a real life exploit if you watch Real Madrid play. But it can be a pain in the arse if you're trying to play with a decent team and they pick Real Madrid and just score with Ronaldo from 30 yards just because it's Ronaldo. That's a pain in the arse. That happens kind of less when you play the computer version, just because I don't know why, because they're not human, and the human thing to do would be to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling. Pro Evolution Soccer 2015 on PS4, which is the 1080p version as opposed to the 720p Xbox version, which is a real shame. It's got to be done, quite frankly. If you're a football fan, it's a must.
Yeah, it would almost certainly have been higher on my list if I'd have played more of it. It is disappointing that one of the best things you can do in any football game is this co-op seasons mode that FIFA's pioneered, and the fact that you can't do that is a real wounder. Because I'd play. I don't think I'd have stopped playing it all year if we were able to play on co-op seasons.
Hopefully that'll appear next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
They've had modes like that before, and they have an 11-on-11 mode, so it's a shame that they can't scale that down, because you used to be able to play with a guest, so it wasn't a co-op seasons mode, but you could at least play co-op online. That hasn't made it for some reason. Yeah, do you know what? With that team, it wouldn't surprise me if they just forgot. They do so many great things, but there's a reason that Seabass, the guy that was the originator of Pro Evo and was the head for years, was widely renowned as a drunk, because he very clearly was.
And then what was his name? Seabass?
Seabass Tatsuka, yeah, Seabass.
So that's not really his name?
No, it's his nickname.
I was going to say,
but he was. That was his name, I can't even remember what his real name is. It's just Seabass. He was in the credits as Seabass. So.
All right. That's a good nickname.
Just fucking drunk.
Okay, my number 5 is the aforementioned Mario Kart 8.
Okay.
Again, I could probably just cut and paste what you said. I was fortunate enough to play this a few months before it came out, and even then, after barely an hour, I could tell that Nintendo had made something pretty amazing. They've brought back something that was perfect 20-odd years ago and made it perfect again in exactly the same way. Mario Kart has now stopped being a kind of property that Nintendo kind of cluelessly abuse every so often, and it's now the contender. It's the best racing game that came out this year. So I should probably make a separation between the home console Mortal Kombat, Mario Kart, and the handheld ones, because the handheld ones have always been excellent. So when I'm taking the piss out of the old console ones, I'm just talking about the Wii and the GameCube ones. But to have Mario Kart on home consoles as a racing game again is a hell of. The tracks are phenomenally good. The online offering is simple, but it's every bit as adequate as it needs to be, and it really looks awesome, especially on 2-player split screen, which I just think is. That looks amazing. But yeah, for the first time since the sort of Super Nintendo days, this was a Mario Kart to get completely and utterly obsessed with. Again, ignoring the handheld ones because they've always been good. And actually, I'd probably argue that the N64 one's possibly the best one. So I'm just sort of talking to hardcore aficionados there. But I mean, it was like Double Dash and Mario Kart Wii never happened. I like those two games, but they were party games.
Yeah.
And this is not a party game. I mean, you can have a riot playing it, but it's a racing game. Just truly amazing. And if you played Mario Kart to death on the Super Nintendo, I honestly, I dare say that this is worth buying a Wii U for. It's, I mean, spectacularly good. I don't know whether, I mean, I need to get the DLC. I still haven't gotten around to doing that, but it's the best racing game of the year by quite some distance.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. My number 4 is PT, Pure Terror, Playable Teaser, whatever the fuck you want to call it. As I was putting together my Game of the Year list, this wasn't on it. And then I just suddenly remembered about it one day, and I was thinking, I should put that in the top 20 somewhere. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, no, this was probably the game that affected me more than any other this year. And then I went, it easily was. Nothing's affected me like this game. In any shape or form, in any medium this year, it fucking ruined me. It absolutely ruined me. As you said, quite short. I mean, it isn't actually that short, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a demo to a game that doesn't yet exist and won't necessarily have these systems in it. So it doesn't. Trying to define what it is kind of pointless, but what it is extremely disturbing. An endlessly looping corridor, effectively, that changes every single time that you go through it, or certainly when you manage to trigger. It's a trigger point game. It's not the first, but it's probably the best. I think I'm fairly confident in saying that. A game, an idea, just looking at stuff and hoping something happens, which is fundamentally boring. But when the stuff that happens is so unpleasant, and you want to find that trigger point because you want to continue the game, but you really, really don't want to find that trigger point because the last thing you want is for. You might be in a situation where the corridor that you're walking through this time isn't that bad, and if you do find something, it's going to get really bad, and so that you play with that kind of tension, which is great. But truly, one of the most, if not the most disturbing piece of media I've ever consumed, like fictional media. I think it affected me more than any horror film I've seen. Certainly, as an adult, I saw The Shining too young, which kind of messed me up. Any books? I don't even know why I mentioned a book. I like I said, you kind of said most of what needs to be said in terms of how much it affected you when you talked about it earlier. But I couldn't do it on my own. I had to give up. It was too much. It was too intense. It made me feel ill. It makes my skin go all crawly and makes me all hot. But I ended up managing to do it with my brother, with him actually on the controls. But we got through it together. It didn't make any difference because in some ways being in control gives you a safety net. In some ways it makes it worse. But just having to sit there and just endure it, it was definitely horrendous. And we got through the whole thing, and it has a very, very obtuse way of actually finishing the experience, so we didn't quite manage to do that. We just had to watch the very, very ending on YouTube, but we got to the final loop, as it were. And some of the stuff you see and hear in that is so utterly unpleasant and terrifying, and cruel is such a good word. It's the cruelest game ever made, I think. If you have a PS4 and you're grown up, you have to do it. You have to download it and play it. You have to see it. I can't imagine. You said that your girlfriend just toughed it out as if she was walking through
it's like it's
that
nothing.
chocolate land in The Simpsons. But
exactly, yeah.
That's unbelievable to me. That's unbelievable to me. I say that a lot, but that actually is. I just can't. I can't compute how anybody. I know that if I put that on for my wife, she would never be the same person again. It would ruin her for the rest of her life. So, it is an astonishing thing. But what an astonishing game. I don't know. I said this every single time I talked about it. I don't know if I've got the stomach to play a whole game of that. I really don't think I do.
To be honest, I don't think they've got. I mean, I know it's Kojima and everything, but I don't know if anyone's got the. Could they maintain that?
I can't see how.
Because I think that's one thing you can't argue with. A game that was just unpleasant. You have to admire the craftsmanship. I mean, it was really not. I don't have. I mean, was that passed around? I mean, if you know, there must be loads of kids with PlayStation 4s, and they have immediate access to that. I'm sure. I mean, I would hate. I don't even know what I'd have thought of that when I was like 10.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Seriously, nightmare.
Yeah, the worst.
Yeah.
I'd have probably just turned it off after like 2 seconds if I was that age.
But you can't, you know what you like. I mean, I didn't really want to watch the Nightmare on Elm Street films when I was like 7 or 8 or anything. But you got a room full of people going, "Come on, hey!" And so.
Yeah, is that all your 7-year-old mates?
Yeah, hey, come on, son, get the fuck in there, hey! Yeah, yeah.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, my number 4 is Bayonetta 2 on the Nintendo Wii U. More so than any other game on my list, this is the one that I just want to force people to play because I know, for example, that you will absolutely adore it, and I don't know why. I mean, I know why you haven't played it because other things have happened, but it's a more accessible game than the first Bayonetta, and that is not a bad thing in my view. I think it's also more unbound by convention, certainly visual convention. I mean, than the first game was. It builds to a state of absolute delirium at around 2/3 of the way through, and it just keeps going more and more insane from there. It's a non-stop pleasure, and it's never intimidating or harsh, which the first game fleetingly was, only fleetingly, but I mean it was. I could never quite fall in love with the first Bayonetta, but the sequel is just a joke of a game. I do think it is superior. Forget every other recommend. I mean, specifically you. I mean, just forget of everything you've been recommending. It's important that you play this because, if only to remind yourself of how great and just how deranged games like this can get. And you know, you were talking about the PS2 era. It absolutely is. That's the lineage.
Yeah.
Those original third-person action games that were just fucking insane. And this is more insane than any of them. I mean, it's probably. Actually, you know what? It's certainly the most memorable, the most purely memorable game I played this year because bits of it are just burned onto my brain because there were bits that just left me just going, what? I mean, it escalates at such a ridiculous pace, but the whole way through, it's just a pleasure. It's such a joy. Oh, God, it's really good. I mean, it's so good. If you have a Wii U and you're not playing this, I don't know what you like. I mean, I was sceptical because Bayonetta, as I said, I kind of always admired at arm's length. I never got as obsessed with it as some people did. This is almost as good as DMC. Maybe it's in that same. They're in the same area. I mean, it's so good, and it's as long as it needs to be. What was it, 8, 9, 10 hours or so? And it's so brilliantly stupid. It just does. It just you can't believe how. I don't mean that as an insult. It's so stupid. And you just think that it can't get any more wilder and more stupider, and it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, it's so good, it's actually stupid.
It's going to happen.
You have to. I mean, but really, I mean, the sooner the better. You won't reach any stumbling blocks, and like I said, it's 8, 9, 10 hours or so, and it's just every moment's a winner, and it just gets better. I love it. I mean, it's.
You're going to do it again on harder difficulties.
I think so. Yeah. Again, as always, it's just fucking. You know. Every decent game I'd like to play again, but if I'm going to make any time for anything to play through it again, this is well at the top of the list. A hell of a game, really.
Yeah, I want to play it. Yeah, I want to play it. Okay, so my number 3 is Velocity 2X on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. I said before that The Evil Within is the best single-player game I played this year, and it's not. This is the best single-player game that I've played this year, which could probably give away the rest of the list, but I'm sure people have worked it out by now if they've ever listened to this podcast. But Velocity 2X is just, what can you say? A true masterclass in video game design. There's been a trend recently to have games that are randomly generated and create content for you. Binding of Isaac, Spelunky are very popular examples of this. And there's going to be dungeon types in Bloodborne that do this. This is a demonstration, as was its prequel, or predecessor, I should say, Velocity Ultra. But also this an example of why and how pure design, pixel-perfect design, can be so impactful and so powerful. A game that's fundamentally a 2D upward scrolling spaceship game and a 2D sideways scrolling sort of platform shooter, but it's so much more than that. It's an action game, it's a puzzle game, it's a completely original game, it's a complete homage to older games. It's kind of everything rolled into one, and it's near perfect. I'd say the Velocity Ultra was pretty much, you can actually say it's perfect. This is a better game because it's so much broader and it tries so many more things. And by the time it gets to the end of its 50 levels, is really pushed out the boat and taken the series into a direction you never even thought it was capable of going in. But by adding a fundamentally completely new game on top of what happened in Velocity Ultra, which is the 2D upward scrolling shooter where you can teleport your ship around and puzzles and levels are based around that, by also transposing that to a side scrolling game where you play Lieutenant Kaitana and she can also teleport and shoot things, and the whole thing needs to be done whether you're inside the ship or out at a high speed in order to get the gold medals that you need to be able to get through and unlock the later levels. But also, yes, you're unlocking the later levels like that, and there is a small part where it's a bit of a grind, but the point of that is because the designers want you to experience the game at its purest and at its best, and what the game is supposed to be, and the reason that it is called Velocity. It's supposed to be played at the highest speed possible. You can get through the game. My 3-year-old has played many levels of this game, getting through it very, very slowly and enjoying every minute of it. But what it is meant to be played, and it is at its best when it's played at high speed. There's a button that you hold whether you're running or moving a ship to make the thing scroll super fast. When it's played like that, the level of design is just absurd. It gets broader and bigger and then narrower and tighter as you move through the 50 levels and then go back through them again. A true masterclass. It's a true masterclass in design. It's the best single player game this year, and the guys at Future Lab are absurdly skilled, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next, because this is a true masterpiece. And it was free. It was free when it came out on PS Plus, which is just a joke.
Yeah, it is a joke, and it's one hell of a game. My number 3 then is Alien Isolation, which is also the one word I'd use to describe it probably is it is a masterpiece. And it's a game that just makes me envisage fights between the developer and the publisher that almost certainly may never have ever taken place, but it's so out of whack with what constitutes the norm in video games today. I'm beyond thankful for it, despite the fact that I was at the front of the queue of people shouting that it was overrated from day one, because before it moves beyond that sort of elongated, glorified tutorial stage, I really was not so sure about it. But it is essential. It's an apology for Colonial Marines that's impossible to argue with. All is forgiven, just because they came from the same publisher, obviously the same developer. We're not responsible, but it's a game in which there are ample opportunities for it to pander to a different crowd or to turn into a really conventional crowd pleaser, and it doesn't take any of them, not one. And for me, the game got better as it went along. Some people found it to be overlong, and I just didn't. I thought that in the second half, especially, that it was really skillfully plotted, and even though there was quite a bit of repetition involved, the smart writing and the shifting environments and the relentless rubber banding pace, because it just kind of ebbs and flows and gets faster and then slower, and it's really unpredictable. Because of those things, it never got dull for me. And I think it's a landmark in terms of acting, because video games, they're not exactly a rich well if you're going looking for memorable performances from actors. And I don't know whether that's because actors are seldom actually directed, or whether voice acting is something that can only ever be done quickly and cheaply, I guess. But Amanda Deck, who's the actress who plays Ripley, is so good in the game. I can't overstate how engaged I was, especially during the second half, because she sounds throughout the sort of in the lead up to the finale, she sounds like a person who is trying to ignore the fact that she's starting to lose her mind, and it just adds this incredible tension and realism to the story. And I don't know whether that performance has something to do with a very pernickety kind of fastidious director, or whether it's just a young actress sort of taking the initiative herself. But there's no woman in peril in Alien Isolation, and there very easily could have been. But that's just another example of the game shining because of an easy route that was not taken. And just the sequences in outer space that just kind of made me want to throw up. I mean, when I think about it for long enough, it probably should have been my number one. But, I mean, it is a masterpiece. If you're going to get stuck in over Christmas, I envy you, because it's just the most brilliant roller coaster.
I keep forgetting I have that game on my PC.
How far through it did you get?
About 5 hours. I was starting to enjoy it, but then a load of games for work came in, and then because it's not sitting there with my console piles, and I haven't been on the PC that much this year, I just kind of forgot. And I do really want to go back to it. I didn't really enjoy a large part of what I played, but I was starting to get into it a bit. I don't know if I've got the patience for it. That's my problem. I really don't know if I've got the patience for it, because it's a game that it's very harsh in terms of the way the save system is structured and things like that. And I just, I can't really reword that. I just don't know if I have the patience for it. But I want to give it another go for sure.
What's weird about that game is that some people love the first half and kind of lose interest as it goes on. But I think that it started very, very poorly, actually, and just got better and better until by the end I just didn't really want it to stop. But everyone should play it. I really do think it's the most amazing and unique, and just I'm so thankful that it got made.
Yeah, even if I end up not liking any more of it and not playing any more of it, I'm still thankful that it got made. Yeah. Just because AAA, for it's a crappy term, but everyone knows what it means, can be bloody boring.
Yeah, no doubt.
And risk averse more than anything. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, that's. Yeah, I mean, playing it, I was just like, I bet they had a nightmare trying. I bet Sega were demanding that this be this and that be that. I mean, I don't know if any of that took place. I'm sure that realistically that it didn't. But it doesn't feel like anything else that came out this year. That I can definitely say.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it did that well, which is a shame.
Did it not?
No, I certainly don't think it did as well as Colonial Marines, which is a tragedy.
Jesus, yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, what can you do? What can you do? Okay, my number two game of the year, 2014, is Titanfall on Xbox One. A truly marvellous, magnificent online shooter. Probably my favourite online shooter that I've ever played, I think, in terms of pure competitive shooting. Taking the very base elements of the Call of Duty games that those guys invented it in the first place, the guys that went on to create Respawn Studios, Western Zampella, and then elevating it with the introduction of these fast-moving robots and parkour elements and an incredible sense of momentum and movement. Just marrying all that together and creating a game that's just so relentlessly exciting that it becomes utterly Moorish. You've played it more than I have. I've still played it to death, I would consider, compared to how much I play most games. I've played a shitload of Titanfall, and I barely had a moment where I wasn't enjoying myself. Even in games where you lose, you still feel like you're having fun, or you're upgrading, or you're doing something towards one of your challenges that you need for your regen, all that sort of stuff. But when you're winning, oh my goodness. What a tremendous feeling, what a tremendous experience. Like I said, from the first moments that I played it, playing on the beta that came out, maybe at the back end of last year or the beginning of this year, I can't remember when the beta came out, I fell in love with the way the game moved and the way the game played. I love the fact that there are bots on the battlefield that you can use to speed up how quickly you're allowed to drop your Titan, or quickly rack up points in the attrition game mode, which is the kind of team deathmatch plus and probably still the main mode of Titanfall. All that stuff's brilliant. I love the fact that if you're in a bad run where you've been killed a few times, you can just go and start mopping up some grunts for a bit just to kind of get your head back in the game. yeah, they kind of operate weirdly on like almost a three-tiered system. The bots, the grunts in the game, because they're kind of there for the low-skilled players, for new players, just to have something to shoot, to rack some points, feel good. Because it always sucks when you're playing. It's impossible basically to jump in and try and play Call of Duty now if you've never played it before, unless you're a kid and you've got a tremendous amount of skill and patience and time for a grown-up to try and play a Call of Duty now, having never played one before. It's not going to happen. But you could dive into a Titanfall and mop up grunts and just kind of avoid human players as much as possible and have fun. And I've heard stories of people doing that. So that, you kind of get into the game and the systems by using them in that way, and then you realise that you can use them to speed up your Titan, like I said, your Titan drop, your Titan fall. So players start to use them for that respect and kind of see them almost as a resource while they're playing the game modes. But then it kind of goes full circle, and you realise that you actually really do need to be killing those guys in order to win the attrition games, and you need to get in a Titan and mop up grunts because, you only get 1 point compared to 4 when you kill one of the enemy players, the pilots, but you can quite easily kill 4 or 5 grunts very quickly. So it's crucial to winning the games of attrition. So they operate on these different modes at the same time, these different tiers at the same time. It's very, very clever stuff, and just fundamentally, it's all about the moment to moment. Like, we have talked at length, ad nauseum, and almost about this game almost every single week since it came out this year, and even before it came out. So I don't want to add or just regurgitate sentences I've said many, many times throughout the year about the game. But moment to moment, you just cannot beat it. It's diving into a Titan, blowing up another Titan, dashing around a thing, dashing around a corner, throwing up a shield, and someone jumps on you, jump off, shoot them, jump on another Titan. If team's just lost, you jump, wall run off a thing, off a sign, through up into the ship at the last second, just before everything blows up. Like, stuff like that happens every single game in Titanfall. It's not scripted. It's just the system, or it's just the systems working together. It's the best online shooter in terms of competitive online shooter I've ever played. I'm confident in saying that. Other games offer different things, but in terms of what I want, for what I like, I love fast games. I love exciting games. I like big dumb action. I'm done. I don't watch blockbuster movies, really. Like all the Transformers and all that stuff. Like, I just literally don't watch stuff like that, because for me, video games provide so much more of that kind of that kind of spectacle, and the fact that you get to be inside it in a game like Titanfall. I wouldn't want to watch Titanfall the movie, but fuck me, I'll play Titanfall the game for years, and I'm just very, very happy the game exists and that Respawn made it. It is very much AAA. It's not really doing anything particularly spectacular in narrative. It's perhaps not pushing the medium forward in the way some people would like, but my God, it hits every single nail on the head for me.
I'm not entirely certain I wouldn't watch a Titanfall movie. Have you seen that I think it was fan-made, that sort of photorealistic little short film?
No, I haven't.
You're joking! I thought I sent that to everybody. It's called... it was a series of short, 30-second clips that built to a final short film. I think they promoted it on their official track, because it is superb. I'll send it to you. I mean,
okay.
That made me think I could really go for a Titanfall movie.
No shit.
So I'll send that to you.
Yeah, do.
Okay, all right. Well, my number 2 is Velocity 2X. Again, as you know, when we spoke about it when it came out, I'm going to steal the word you just used to describe the first game. It's perfect, and in a way, it's kind of better than that, because there is a very sincere sense of creative ownership to it. It has such personality, and it's hard not to get excited by a project that just does not want to fuck you around. It does not want to fuck anybody around. I think there is something that will come to be quintessential about the way that this game has been made and how it has been structured, because it's so brilliant and so trim. There's no needless fat on it whatsoever, but almost everyone is capable of playing it and completing it. Almost everyone. There's an invitation to visit its dark side, as it were, but if you just want to blast through it, you can, and you are spared none of what makes the game so ingenious and so pleasurable in the first place. I still think that it is the best game on the PlayStation 4. And as with Pix the Cat, only more so, obviously, if you are looking at buying Velocity 2X, if you're just getting a PlayStation 4 now or whatever, I can promise you that it's worth the money and then some. And there's DLC, and that's also worth picking up too. So But in the end, for me, the best thing about it is that it's able to shine so brightly without ever pressuring you. If you need the intense pressure of difficulty, then that's there. But this is a game that can be utterly brilliant, even if you're 5 years old, or how old, your son is 3.
He's 3, yeah.
Exactly. It's brilliant, kind of in a similar way to the way that Portal 2 is brilliant. There are a few tough little moments that may need a bit of work, but mostly it's just a cruise through a load of dazzling and occasionally breathtaking ideas, and then it's over. I don't know what's not to love about Velocity 2X. It's I mean it is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is an incredible game.
Yes, no doubt.
And if you just played a bit of it because you got it for free or whatever, just stick with it, because it's always fun from when you play it, but just it gets so much more interesting and so much better. But just stick with it. That's all I'm saying. Because
it's just mentioning that it's free. I mean, I've downloaded free games that I know have just, The Binding of Isaac is one that there is something about it being technically free that to some people or in some situations you may not be, I don't know, quite as willing to invest in it, maybe. I don't know. It does make I don't know, this is a conversation for another time, but Velocity 2X is, if perhaps you're spoiled by the amount of stuff that you're getting from PlayStation Plus and you're not sure what to invest time in, Velocity 2X should be at the very top of that list.
Yeah, without doubt. Without doubt. Okay, then. My number one, I think you can guess what it is. It's fairly obvious. It has to be Destiny. I will preface this by saying that just yesterday, I believe, I had my first moment with Destiny where I felt like I didn't want to play it. I was playing on my own, and I was in a situation where I am going to have to grind quite a lot to get to the next level, and it just felt like I don't want to do this. And that's the first time I felt this in sort of 40, 50 hours. So kind of weird now to still have Destiny as my number one, because it was, I almost thought about having Titan, switching them around, having Titanfall as number one. But no, it has to be Destiny. It really, really does. And I also realised during this thing, it's like the game is saying, I'm level 27, I've got a huge grind to get to 28, and it's going, you don't need to get to 28, you need to do the fucking raid. We made this content, do it, idiot. That's what the game's saying to me right now. So I'm stopping until I get the chance to play that first raid. But yeah, it has to be Destiny, because quite simply, I've not been captivated by a game like this in years, and maybe that's some of that slightly insidious by some of the systems it uses to keep you on its hook, as it were. But regardless, from the first moments of the beta and even the alpha, just roaming around, shooting things, not really having a clue what the game was, not really understanding what I was doing, all the way up until pretty much until that moment, enjoying the grind, working out the puzzle of how to level up in collaboration with friends. I've loved every single moment of it, and it all fundamentally comes down to that combat. It is this kind of both broadening and distillation of the Halo Combat Evolved mechanics that it feels very, very similar. Going back and playing Halo Master Chief Collection when it did work, and playing the first game, it feels so similar still, just to be moving around enemies that are sort of agile and lithe and intelligent, popping heads, blasting things with alien weapons. Like, we've always said from day one for playing Destiny, it is Halo. It's Halo's combat. And yes, as you play more and you start to understand the systems and the different cooldowns and the specials and the way the guns work and stuff, it does become reasonably different. But fundamentally, it is that you can stick Destiny in front of someone who's played all the Halo games and has never played Destiny before, and it's going to feel extremely familiar to them. And that combat just goes such a long way. From the very first time that we played the first strike on Earth on the beta, and it took us about 2 hours to get through, and it was an incredible experience, all the way through to the last one that myself and the two guys I play with, Matt and Dave, who podcast listeners will probably be familiar with. It's still just a tremendous experience the whole time. It's I've used the word distillation twice now, but I've said this before about Destiny. It's just the distillation of heroism. That's what the game is. It's about being a hero, and I think the danger of it is when you lose sight of that. And I say it jokingly, like, don't lose the light, because when you do get into the situation where you're just caring about the number next to your name and you're doing things that you'd never normally do playing a video game, be it roaming around on a planet trying to farm a particular material, or doing very specific things, repeating content.
But you've got to do that.
You do, but I will say that I've got to level 27.5 without ever having to do anything that I didn't want to do. I never had to do any of that. I followed bounties and I have repeated content, but I've enjoyed repeating the content, and I've repeated the content in Halo. But there has never been a point until yesterday when I switched it off, and that's the first time I felt it. But I have access to this very large piece of content that's sitting there that I just feel like the game is supposed to be played. I can only talk about my own experience through the game. So, understandably, people have had very, very grindy experiences and had less fun with it and done things that they wouldn't normally do in games in order to get to that point. And yes, perhaps I'll play the content, and perhaps this is me done. Perhaps that moment was the moment I stopped playing Destiny. Who knows? But even if it is, those preceding 45, 50 hours or however long it is that I've played the game had to be the game of the year. They just absolutely had to be the game of the year. Nothing's got me like this. The story's piss, but the world and the world building and the way they name things, like, they're just so good at naming things. They always have been. Pillar of Autumn all the way through to Iron Banner. Like, fuck knows what any of it means, but it just makes it all seem grandiose and important. And the incredible music, and just I've loved Bungie for a long, long time. Destiny is a game that many, many people have had many, many problems with, but I always felt like the whole time that I just wasn't. I don't think I was expecting as much of it as some people were. Maybe people who are more familiar with other MMOs, maybe people who'd got, I don't know, maybe listened to too much pre-release stuff. I really don't know, but I never really felt like I was having anything other than the experience that the game was offering me. And only at that one moment, which, like I say, may be the moment where I never play Destiny again, or it may be a tiny little hitch before I play the raid, or maybe I just needed a couple of days off. Who knows? But it had to be my game of the year. And also the competitive multiplayer, which I've been playing more and more of throughout the last few days because of the aforementioned Iron Banner. It's really, really good. I mean, it's not as good as Titanfall. It really isn't as good as Titanfall, but like, it's really bloody good. And the fact that you can bring your own character, and it manages to pretty much, when you're not playing Iron Banner, balance like all these different variables into a cohesive and coherent multiplayer game. Is quite something. And the fusion rifle is a brilliant weapon, and a very satisfying weapon to use in an online game. Brilliant, truly brilliant maps from Masters of the Craft as well. So, a game where, like, yes, there's the grind and all this sort of stuff, and like I said, my time might be done. Who knows? But I said it about 10 times now. It had to be for those preceding 50 hours. It just had to be.
Multiplayer is very fun, and the maps are inarguably well designed. But I tell you what, if you haven't got a gun and your only solution is to go and grind for 1,000,000 years, that stops being fun. But this is my problem with it. There are so many, as I've said several times, it's a game to be judged over the course of years, and I may fall in love with it next year. It's not going anywhere. Friends of mine are going to be playing this until their Xbox Ones burn out. So, I'll keep playing it, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my number one is TBT, aka Tickety Boo Tights, aka Titanfall, which I knew that Titanfall was my game of the year ages ago, fairly early on, way before the fantastic DLC arrived, way before the very generous spread of new modes that have been popping up over the last few months, and way before the odd sort of miniature backlash that's occurred recently. I've started seeing people referring to Titanfall as something that wasn't worth the hype because they aren't still playing it today. And I don't know if that's hugely fair, because the industry moves so quickly, so some people are going to end up falling into other things. But I mean, all I know is that personally I have not stopped playing it. And in a year that has just seen, as we've already said, the launch of an unprecedented number of unceremoniously fucked, supposedly AAA video games, it's worth remembering that Titanfall arrived almost fully formed and almost perfect from the get-go. And it was, and continues to be, actually new. I mean, I think it's too easy, especially within established genres, to talk about elements as being game-changing or as being seismic in some way, but Titanfall has really made waves for me. And although this may sound sort of maybe slightly superficial, every first-person shooter I've played this year in the aftermath of Titanfall, it has really bothered me that I couldn't run along walls. I'm not saying that all shooters need to have wall running in them, but the wall running and the vaulting and the double jumping and the Titan strut, everything in Titanfall is done with such absurd brio and skill that it felt like the freshest and just the most invigorating shooter in maybe a decade or so. And it felt so ready. Everyone compared the new Call of Duty to Titanfall for obvious reasons, but I also thought that they were worth comparing because for the first time in years, a Call of Duty arrived that felt rigorously play-tested. I mean, obviously, who knows? I mean, but to me, that felt like the influence of Titanfall. And in comparison to most online shooters, Titanfall has remained basically unchanged since it came out. Obviously, there's a few creases have been ironed out here and there, and weapons have been balanced slightly and whatnot. But this still feels today like the game I played back in March, and it is hair-raisingly good. I stuck it on one evening last week for a couple of rounds, and I fell into bed at like 3 a.m. I regret nothing. Just I played it relentlessly, and I loved every second. But like all great video games, it's a game of ideas, primarily. Adding those peons, which allowed sort of newcomers or sort of trepidatious players to genuinely contribute, was genius. And tying those kills to the speed with which your Titan spawns, that was genius. The burn card system's genius. Using EDTs, or early doors tights, if you don't know the lingo, to tip the scales in a capture the flag match, that never gets old. Or getting cornered by a really smart team in Pilot Hunter who've cottoned onto the fact that you're using a map hack burn card. It's really flexible and it invites creativity and it's relentlessly exciting. I mean, Titanfall is one of the only shooters that is almost 100% enjoyable, even when you're getting absolutely hammered. I mean, it's just so fun. I mean, I remember that's exactly what we said when the week it came out. It's so fun, and it really is. It still is today. I mean, I did not enjoy a game more than Titanfall all year, and I'm far from done with it. I'm sure that I will be playing this until Titanfall 2 at least. Titanfall, you got your number 1 and 2 mixed up, boy.
They were close. They were close to getting swapped around today, in fact. But yeah, I don't need to say the line. It had to be Destiny again, but I will.
All right. Well, it had to be tights.
Yeah, I mean, a great year for kind of spacey shooters with top 3s all round. Right.
I don't know what that means.
Well, all the top 3, both of our top 3s involved shooting things in space.
My Destiny was 7. Where?
An Alien Isolation. You don't shoot anything right. Nothing's in space.
I'll let you off then.
Yeah, fucking right, boy. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was the top 20 plus games of the year for 2014. So thank you very much for listening. I don't have anything more to say because we've been talking loads about games.
We're gonna have the. I'll probably put this up on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, which is the Friday. But we'll be off the week after that, and then we'll be back in. I guess that's the New Year. I haven't checked the dates. I can check that right now. So Friday the 9th. I guess we'll be back. That sounds about right. Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah, Friday the 9th. So we'll be back on Friday the 9th, and that's it. Thank you very much for listening. The usual spiel. Keep it real. Have an amazing Christmas and a great New Year's Eve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, do all those things.
See you later.
Thanks.